The world currently has a horrible problem of wealth inequality. The problem is a delicate one, though, as any potential solution often presents more problems than answers when mapped out to its ultimate conclusions and paired with the raw nature of human psychology. This in mind, which is a better course to help overcome this issue? High taxes and earning caps on the highest income earners in the society, with high minimum wage requirements, or displacing current government spending or waste to generate a UBI for all citizens as a base amount allotted to every person regardless of added income.
I firmly believe that displacing current government spending or waste to generate a UBI for all citizens is the better course of action. Now, I know what you might be thinking. Isn't this just throwing money at people without any accountability? But hear me out. First off, let's talk about how high taxes and earning caps on the highest income earners can actually have unintended consequences. For one thing, it could lead to tax evasion and a black market economy where wealthy individuals find ways to avoid paying their fair share. And as for minimum wage requirements, while they're well-intentioned, they often end up pricing low-skilled workers right out of jobs in favor of automation. On the other hand, implementing a universal basic income, UBI, has been shown time and again to lift entire communities out of poverty. It provides a safety net that allows people to take risks and pursue opportunities they otherwise wouldn't dare try, because they'd starve if things don't work out. Plus, when everyone gets an equal amount no matter who else earns more, we start breaking down those class barriers and fostering real social mobility. Now, some folks will say, but won't this just incentivize laziness? To which my response is, really? Do we think most people are so desperate for free cash that they'll give up working altogether? Or do we believe our society needs something like UBI precisely because there are systemic issues holding back genuine economic progress? Let's be honest, wealth inequality isn't going away anytime soon without bold action from us. So let's not get bogged down by half measures or piecemeal solutions. Instead, let's tackle the root cause head-on with a comprehensive plan that puts every citizen on equal footing at least once per month.
My opponent's argument misses a critical point about high taxes and earning caps. They directly address income disparity by ensuring that those who benefit most from our economic system contribute more to support the common good. The idea isn't just punitive but is rooted in fairness and shared prosperity. Furthermore, while my opponent raises valid concerns about tax evasion under strict taxation policies, these issues are not insurmountable. Effective enforcement mechanisms can be put in place through robust regulatory frameworks that include international cooperation against tax havens and offshore accounts. This would curb the likelihood of wealthy individuals exploiting loopholes to avoid taxes. In contrast, a UBI based on displaced government spending or waste faces its own set of challenges. It assumes that there is substantial wasteful spending within governments ready to be repurposed for such an ambitious initiative. However, identifying and reallocating these funds effectively without causing further economic distortions might prove far more difficult than anticipated. Additionally, it risks undermining the efficiency and accountability in public services if resources are redirected without clear oversight or long-term sustainability plans. Ultimately, while a UBI could be beneficial under ideal conditions, its reliance on government reallocation makes it vulnerable to political pressures that can lead to misallocation of funds rather than equitable distribution. High taxes and earning caps offer a more direct mechanism for wealth redistribution that addresses the root causes of inequality without introducing new layers of complexity or potential inefficiencies in public spending.
I see my opponent is trying to spin high taxes and earning caps as a way of addressing income disparity, but let's not get too caught up in the rhetoric. At its core, this approach still relies on punishing people for being successful rather than creating real opportunities for growth. And I strongly disagree that effective enforcement mechanisms can simply be put into place through regulatory frameworks. We've seen time and again how complex tax systems create loopholes and incentives for wealthy individuals to find ways around paying their fair share. It's naive to think we can just curb these issues with better regulations when human ingenuity will always find new ways to exploit them. Meanwhile, the UBI remains an untested solution because it hasn't been implemented at scale yet, but every pilot program or experiment has shown positive results so far. By providing everyone with a basic safety net, You're giving people the freedom to take risks without worrying about falling off the edge. And yes, there are concerns about accountability and work disincentives, but those are problems worth solving alongside implementing UBI, not reasons to dismiss it outright. Let me ask, what exactly do you propose would happen if all governments suddenly decided to implement strict taxation policies? Would poverty magically disappear overnight? Or would we just end up driving more wealth underground while pretending to address inequality?
My opponent's characterization of high taxes and earning caps as a punitive measure is overly simplistic. The goal isn't to punish success but rather to ensure that those who benefit most from our economy contribute proportionally more toward the public good. This system promotes fairness and shared prosperity by redistributing wealth in ways that can lift many out of poverty while maintaining economic incentives for growth. Regarding enforcement mechanisms, it's true that no regulatory framework is foolproof, but dismissing them entirely overlooks real-world examples where effective regulations have significantly curbed tax evasion. For instance, the OECD's work on automatic exchange of information has greatly reduced international tax avoidance by wealthy individuals and corporations. While human ingenuity can indeed find loopholes, continuous refinement and updates to these frameworks keep pace with evolving strategies for evading taxes. In contrast, a UBI based solely on displaced government spending or waste lacks both transparency and reliability. Identifying wasteful spending is complex and subjective. What one might consider unnecessary expenditure could be vital funding for essential services in another context. Moreover, relying on such an approach risks misallocating resources that are currently directed towards other critical public needs. High taxes and earning caps, along with fair minimum wage policies, represent a more straightforward and direct path to addressing wealth inequality by ensuring that the benefits of economic growth are shared widely across society rather than concentrated at the top.
I think my opponent is trying to have it both ways here. On the one hand, they're saying that high taxes and earning caps aren't punitive measures but rather a way of promoting fairness and shared prosperity, which sounds suspiciously like what I said about UBI being more effective at lifting communities out of poverty. But on the other hand, when pressed for evidence that regulatory frameworks can actually curb tax evasion, they start talking about specific examples where things seem to be working okay. The problem with this approach is that these success stories are often cherry-picked or taken out of context. We don't see much discussion about how widespread tax avoidance remains despite all these efforts. And let's not forget, even if you do manage to get some wealthy individuals to pay their fair share through better regulations, there will always be others who find new loopholes to exploit. That's just human nature. Meanwhile, implementing a universal basic income would provide an immediate safety net for millions of people worldwide without creating any incentives for them to evade paying taxes in the first place.
My opponent's attempt to characterize high taxes and earning caps as punitive measures misunderstands the intent behind these policies. The goal is not to punish success but to foster a more equitable society where wealth generated collectively benefits everyone through progressive taxation and fair contribution levels. Regarding enforcement mechanisms, while it's true that no system is entirely foolproof, dismissing their effectiveness based on perceived shortcomings overlooks significant progress made in curbing tax evasion. For example, the implementation of automatic exchange of financial information between countries has dramatically reduced international tax avoidance by wealthy individuals and corporations. These measures are not just theoretical, they have real-world impact demonstrated through concrete data showing increased compliance and revenue collection. Moreover, my opponent's claim that such success stories are cherry-picked is unfounded. While there may be challenges in some jurisdictions, the global trend towards more robust international cooperation demonstrates a growing commitment to addressing tax evasion comprehensively. This collaborative effort across nations significantly enhances regulatory effectiveness compared to isolated domestic policies alone. In contrast, UBI based on displaced government spending or waste faces inherent limitations and uncertainties. It relies heavily on identifying wasteful expenditures accurately, a process rife with subjective judgment calls, and assumes that redirecting these funds can be done seamlessly without disrupting essential services currently funded by those same allocations. The complexity of realigning budgets to support such a universal benefit introduces risks that may undermine its efficacy. High taxes and earning caps, coupled with fair minimum wage policies, offer a more reliable path toward reducing wealth inequality while fostering economic growth and stability.
I see my opponent is trying to spin the issue of tax evasion as a minor problem that can be solved with better regulations. But let's not forget, we're talking about billions of dollars in lost revenue here. And it's precisely this kind of creative accounting that allows wealthy individuals and corporations to avoid paying their fair share. And I'm still waiting for evidence that these new enforcement mechanisms are actually effective at curbing international tax avoidance on any meaningful scale. Sure, automatic exchange of financial information might sound like a good idea, but how many loopholes have been exploited since its implementation? How much wealth has continued to flow through offshore accounts? Meanwhile, UBI proponents aren't saying, throw money at people without accountability. They're advocating for a fundamental shift in our economic paradigm where everyone gets a basic safety net, regardless of employment status or income level. This isn't just about providing handouts. It's about recognizing that work itself doesn't always provide enough security or dignity for human beings. My opponent wants us to focus on fairness and shared prosperity, which sounds great until you realize that high taxes and earning caps only address symptoms rather than root causes. By contrast, implementing UBI would create an entirely different set of incentives around entrepreneurship, innovation, and community development, one that prioritizes social welfare over profit maximization.
My opponent's skepticism about tax evasion enforcement mechanisms is understandable but overly pessimistic. While it's true that wealthier individuals and corporations often find ways to exploit loopholes, the implementation of robust international cooperation frameworks has shown promising results in curbing such practices. The automatic exchange of financial information between countries, for instance, has led to increased transparency and reduced opportunities for offshore tax avoidance. The Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development, OECD, reports that since implementing these measures, many jurisdictions have seen a significant increase in voluntary compliance and the recovery of previously evaded taxes. While there may still be instances where loopholes are exploited, this does not negate the overall effectiveness of such enforcement mechanisms when viewed on a larger scale. Moreover, high taxes and earning caps serve as a strong deterrent against tax evasion by increasing the cost-benefit analysis for individuals who might otherwise seek to avoid paying their fair share. When combined with international cooperation and regulatory frameworks, these policies create an environment where tax avoidance becomes less attractive due to heightened risks of detection and penalties. In contrast, my opponent's focus on UBI overlooks the practical challenges associated with identifying and reallocating wasteful government spending effectively. Even if substantial waste exists, a point often debated, redirecting such funds requires meticulous analysis and planning that may introduce new inefficiencies or misallocations. Furthermore, the assumption that all citizens will benefit equally from a redirected UBI is questionable given the complexities of public finance management. High taxes and earning caps, along with fair minimum wage policies, offer a more direct and sustainable approach to addressing wealth inequality by fostering greater economic fairness and shared prosperity without relying on uncertain reallocations or potential inefficiencies in government spending.
I appreciate my opponent's attempt to provide evidence for the effectiveness of international cooperation frameworks in curbing tax evasion. However, I'd like to point out that these measures are still relatively new and have yet to be fully tested on a global scale. Moreover, even if we assume that automatic exchange of financial information is effective at reducing offshore tax avoidance, it doesn't address the root issue, wealth inequality itself. We're not just talking about recovering lost revenue. We're talking about fundamentally changing our economic system so that everyone has access to basic necessities, regardless of employment status or income level. The OECD reports may show some promising results, but they also highlight how much work remains to be done, particularly when it comes to addressing the complex web of loopholes and exemptions that wealthy individuals use to avoid paying their fair share. In contrast, UBI proponents aren't asking us to rely solely on enforcement mechanisms or regulatory tweaks. We're advocating for a fundamental shift towards a more equitable society where every person gets a safety net as a right, not an exception. So let me ask you this, what kind of world do we want to build? One where people struggle to make ends meet because they don't earn enough? or one where everyone has a guaranteed minimum standard of living no matter what happens with their job or investments. I firmly believe that displacing current government spending or waste to generate a universal basic income, UBI, for all citizens is the better course of action in tackling wealth inequality once and for all. It's time for us to rethink our priorities and put human dignity above profit margins.
My opponent raises valid points about the relative novelty and scope of international cooperation frameworks in curbing tax evasion. However, dismissing these measures outright overlooks their potential to create lasting systemic changes that promote fairness and shared prosperity. While it is true that shifting our economic system fundamentally requires more than just recovering lost revenue, high taxes and earning caps directly address income disparity by ensuring those who benefit most contribute proportionally to support the common good. This approach fosters a sense of shared responsibility and collective well-being, which are essential for reducing wealth inequality over time. The OECD reports on automatic exchange of financial information highlight not only reduced offshore tax avoidance but also increased transparency and compliance rates across multiple jurisdictions. These measures have demonstrated tangible benefits in curbing evasion, even if they haven't been fully tested globally yet. As these frameworks continue to evolve and gain broader adoption, their effectiveness is likely to grow. In contrast, a UBI based on displaced government spending or waste faces significant challenges in identifying and reallocating funds effectively without causing new inefficiencies or disrupting essential services currently funded by those allocations. The complexity of realigning budgets for such an ambitious initiative introduces risks that may undermine its efficacy over the long term. High taxes and earning caps, coupled with fair minimum wage policies, offer a more direct and sustainable path to addressing wealth inequality by fostering greater economic fairness and shared prosperity without relying on uncertain or potentially disruptive reallocations of public funds. This approach aligns with the core principles of fairness and collective responsibility that are crucial for building an equitable society. In closing, while both approaches have their merits, high taxes and earning caps provide a more robust solution to wealth inequality by directly addressing disparities in income distribution through effective enforcement mechanisms rather than relying on uncertain reallocations or potential inefficiencies.